Hey Anna, it's Kayla. You know that already. Today I was driving places and I drove past this street, sort of by the back of campus with all the houses and stuff. And do you remember that time that we walked back there to the random street and we called escort and they came and picked us up and we were so cool and weirded out? I remembered that. Do you remember that? It was funny. And do you remember the time that you were in the ceramics room working and I told you a story and it was such an exciting story full of surprises? Well, I have written you a story and I was at work and I just thought I'll write it down so I remember it and so I can relate it to you. And I think it might be kind of lengthy, see I wrote it down, but I'll just read it to you and you can pretend that you're falling asleep and I'm reading you a bedtime story. So here it goes. A story for Anna. Once upon a time there was an old man named Henry. Henry was an inventor. His greatest desire was to build a machine that would allow him to travel through time. Either the past or the future, he didn't really have a preference, though he was more fearful of the future, not knowing what it held. Henry began building a time bus at the age of 40. He worked on a chicken farm, so in his spare time after work, he would go into the barn that was his laboratory and spend a few hours on his construction and research. Henry had a daughter, Louise. He called her Lou for short, but she didn't like that because it's a boy's name. Anyway, Lou would often sit in her dad's lab while he worked at night. They would sing songs and play Tickle Monster. This was Lou's favorite game. Henry would grab his claw, in which he would grasp his wrist with one hand and form the claw with the other, and he would say, "My claw!" and tickle her tummy. This was Lou's favorite feeling, and when she was laughing so hard that her tummy hurt. But Henry always knew the exact time to release the claw, so Lou's tummy didn't hurt too bad. One night, Henry and Lou were in the lab singing as Henry worked on his machine. All of a sudden, Henry experienced a sensation, the feeling that he had experienced that moment of his life before. We know this sensation commonly now as déjà vu, but at the time there was no word for it. Henry took this to mean that he indeed discovered the secret to time travel and had revisited that moment in the future. He began to work feverishly, determined to build his time bus and travel back to the déjà vu moment. Henry didn't leave his lab for the next 5 days, calculating and recalculating and recalibrating. Lou was worried about her dad, so she never left his side, except to bring him food and water. Finally, on the evening of the 5th day, he had completed the time bus. Immediately, he began to prepare to test it. He attached all the wires to their appropriate sockets and was ready to go. He told Lou that he would see her again. He didn't know when or where they would be, but he knew they would be together again. Lou began to cry because she was so scared that she would never see her father again. She sat on the stool that she always sat on while her father worked, as he said his goodbye. As Henry flipped the switch, Lou became so scared, far too much too frightened, and ran to her father to stop him. I regret having to tell you this next part, but as Lou ran to her father, she tripped over the wire connected to the Kniper cycle axle at the worst, most unfortunate moment, and in a moment of blinding light, Lou was gone, and Henry remained in the barn. Henry was devastated because he had not even a guess of when and where Lou could be. Henry knew Lou was alive, and he knew he could find her, but the only way would be to perfect his time bus and to learn to control the destination. Then he could travel into the past, back to that night he lost Lou, and prevent her from being launched into the abyss that is time. Henry slaved over his machine for the next 6 years, finding glitches and making needed adjustments by sending chickens through time. One of the happiest occurrences of Henry's life was when he was sending chickens into the past and would measure their distance of time traveled by dipping their feet in paint and then sending them on the bus. Then he would find their paint tracks in the barn and calculate how old they were by measuring the amount of moisture in them. So he had sent a chicken to when seemed to be the night he lost Lou. He double-checked his calculations to make sure that they were correct and decided tonight was the night. He gathered up all of his research, all of his data and blueprints to take with him, not knowing if he would need to build another time bus where he ended up. At this point, a lot of you might be wondering, where is Lou now? Where in time did she go? As you may or may not know, in time travel, you can travel outside yourself, meaning that you don't have to go back or forward into a moment of your life. Not always, but typically you tend to travel in time only, not physically. So, in Lou's case, she traveled 37 years into the past, but she remained in the location in the chicken farm. But it looked a lot different. What she knows to be the barn, her dad's laboratory, seemed to be under construction. It was nearing sunset, and a boy, not much bigger than her, was putting tools in a toolbox. She walked over to him and said that she was lost. She didn't tell him that she had traveled through time, but even though she was 7, she knew how to make a bad impression. So the boy figured he should take her to his house because his parents would know how to help her. Parents always know how to help little girls who are lost. As they walked into the house, Lou thought it looked familiar. It kind of even smelled like her house, but it didn't look exactly the same. As the screen door slammed behind them, a voice called from the kitchen, "Henry, is that you?" Then it hit her. The little boy was her father. And that must mean that the woman in the kitchen was her grandmother. Lou got very excited because she was with her family, but she had to remind herself that they don't know her yet because she doesn't exist yet. To make a long story short, Lou moved in with Henry and his parents and became part of the family. She wasn't ever scared because she knew them and loved them already. She and Henry became best friends and played adventure all the time. They had the wildest adventures every day. They set sail on the root beer sea and often camped on Peanut Butter Island, where they met pirates, fairies, and luck dragons. Every day was exciting because every day was a new adventure. So let's go back to Henry. Remember, he's about to travel back to the night that he lost Lou. He can only hope that the time bus can repeat the last launch and send him back 6 years. He connected the wires to the sockets and flipped the switch. With blueprints in hand, he jolted through the mystery that is time. It was an interesting sensation. Not quite what he'd expected. It was sort of like he hadn't moved a muscle, but he was just blinking very fast. Now, I want you to do it with me. Blink very fast. That's what he was experiencing as time travel. He only caught small glimpses of what was going on around him, not enough to understand where he was in time. Now, let me inform you of something that Henry didn't know. The time bus had actually sent him back an extra 5 days. You're probably thinking, big deal, right? 5 days. He can still stop Louise from traveling in time. That's incredibly optimistic of you, but actually something quite dreadful happened. We still don't understand why the complexities of time cause this to happen, but if a person travels through time to the exact moment in his life that he experienced deja vu, he encounters an internal time discontinuity. This basically means that Henry's mind is being ping-ponged back and forth between the past and present moments that his present mind is experiencing. His body goes to one place. In Henry's case, his body made it to the past, but his mind isn't fully present for more than 2 seconds at a time. So now, we are back 6 years and 5 days, the night of the deja vu. That's all I have so far. I'm planning on doing the next installment once I figure out how that's all going to work, but I hope you like it. I hope you're having a fun day.